how would you define Doors in the sense that you use it for a name of a group?
Doors are what's between the known and the unknown.
Well, now, doesn't that describe some aspect of life?
Well, not to me.
Does it have any significance to any of you fellas as far as correlating to something in life?
Death.
Death. You feel it correlates with death?
That's what I just said.
Interesting with that, yeah. Okay. I'm curious. You mentioned the magic word right as we went into the Bee Gees film. You said something about the Doors. What is the favorite song that you have?
Crystal Ship.
It just so happens that that's what they're going to do, so that makes a nice introduction.
It does.
So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please greet the Doors?
Before you slip into unconsciousness, I'd like to have another kiss, another flashing chance at bliss, another kiss, another kiss. The days are bright and filled with pain. Enclose me in your gentle rain. The time you ran was too insane. We'll meet again. We'll meet again. Oh, tell me where your freedom lies. The streets are fields that never die. Deliver me from reasons why you'd rather cry. I'd rather fly. The crystal ship is being filled. 1,000 girls, 1,000 thrills, 1,000,000 ways to spend your time. When we get back, I'll drop a line.
John, you want to come down and join us for a half second?
I had been in rock and roll all my life. I'd been playing rock and roll since the 50s. You know, I heard the whole thing in the 50s. I started playing rock and roll when I was 16 years old, doing Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard kind of stuff on the piano. So I had always been in rock and roll and knew it inside out, upside and down, knew my jazz and classical, of course, from my studies.
I just wasn't that brilliant of a musician. So it was off to DePaul University, graduated from DePaul University in Chicago, and then off to California. Now I got to California, and a friend said to me, you know what they've got, Ray, at UCLA, a film school. And I went, ah, eureka, an epiphany. Film, yes, the 20th century art form.
When I first met Jim Morrison, I met him at the UCLA Film School. He was another student. He was a pothead, and he was a very literate guy and extremely well-read, perhaps one of the best read people I've what a collection of books, man. I've never met anybody that had as many books as he did. So he was very literary, great deal of fun to talk to, fun to get high with, was hip to jazz, and was really a blues man, loved his blues and rock and roll, and God, when we first met, the Beatles were coming out across. It was like, 1964. So the Beatles had invaded America. The British invasion had happened. And we were in California watching the British invasion. The Beatles, the Stones, Eric Burden, the Animals, the Kinks, the Who. I mean, group after group after group. You were just, God, great music was being made by a bunch of young guys just like ourselves. I knew he was a poet. I had read some of his poetry. He knew I was a musician. I played with my brother's rock and roll band, a surf band. One of the great undiscovered garage surf bands of Southern California. For all you Australian guys, Rick and the Ravens. You got to check out if you can find any old records, and they do exist. It was on Aura Records, a subsidiary of World Pacific. My brother's surf band, Rick and the Ravens. So Rick was my brother. I wasn't the lead singer. I was like the guest who would come up and sing some songs at the end of the set. And we played a place called the Turkey Joint West in Santa Monica. And Jim and the guys from the UCLA Film School would come down, and they would come on stage and sing every once in a while. I would entice the drunken Jim Morrison, come on up here, you loudmouth, come on and sing. He's requesting Louie, 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 Louie. I said, you sing, you Louie, Louie. Come on up here, ladies and gentlemen. When I reconvened with Jim, that was at UCLA, when I reconvened with Jim on the beach in Venice, after he was going to New York and I was going to stay in LA after we graduated, he had been writing songs. That's how the Doors got together. He'd been writing songs while he was here in LA in that period that I wasn't with him. And he sang some songs to me on the beach in Southern California. And I heard Moonlight Drive for the first time, and he also did My Eyes Have Seen You, and he also did Summer's Almost Gone. And I heard those words and I thought, this is fabulous. This is just, nobody's doing this. Because the Beatles at the time were teeny boppers. They were doing She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they were like the four mop-top lads, and their audience was, quite frankly, was children, young girls, barely post-pubescent girls. And that was their audience. The Rolling Stones were dark and dangerous, and they were the anti-Beatles, the Antichrist personified. And we felt much more of a kinship with them. But quite frankly, they were doing Chicago blues. Basically, I was from Chicago. I knew the blues inside and out. That meant nothing to me. So we had the Beatles doing Everly Brothers harmony, being teeny boppers, the Rolling Stones doing Chicago blues, and then Jim Morrison on the beach in Southern California, middle of July, 1965, sang these songs to me. And I heard, let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide. And I thought, ooh, cool words, psychedelic. We were both acid heads. Psychedelic, ooh, I can do like Jimmy Smith organ or Ray Charles kind of funky kind of organ, and we need a guitar player, a good jazzy guitar player, and a good kind of jazz rock drummer, and God, we could make some great music out of this. And I said to him, we got to get a rock and roll band together. And he said, that's exactly what I had in mind, Ray. And I said, man, we're going to make $1 million. This is going to be incredible. And I said, but there's only one problem. I said, what do we call the band? And he said, well, the Doors. And I said, the Doors? That's the most ridiculous name I've... Wait a minute, I said, the doors in your mind, like the doors of perception? He said, exactly, Aldous Huxley, the doors of perception. We are the doors. I said, oh, God, there are things known, there are things unknown, and in between. And he said, are the doors. That's it, right on. We are the doors of perception. Of course, we won't call ourselves Up Perception, but that's what it's all about, the Aldous Huxley book.
I had been in Santa Barbara, come down to UCLA, where Jim and Ray were at the film school at UCLA, even though I didn't exactly meet them in UCLA, because I was in psychology or physics. And the drummer, John Densmore, is the one who met them first. He met Ray at the meditation course, the Maharishi's meditation. And I was there too, but at that time they only needed a drummer, so John got with him like that, and then later got me in the band because they needed a guitar player because Ray's brothers had finked out. I was in another group at the time, not real serious or anything, At the time, if I thought that I was going to, I never had the the thought that I would ever take rock and roll to be my profession, you know, I never thought that would be a smart way to make money, but it was more of a diversion at the time, you know. But the way it worked out was fine. There was amazing chemistry in that band. You know, I don't know if it's like that in all bands. I know I've been in many bands after the Doors, and not one of them has that spark at all. You know, what you need is 4 guys or 5 guys who are equally at the same spot in their, which cog they're on in finding what they're going to do in life, you know. It's like they, you know, you can't have one guy who's a total dedicated musician, another guy who's just in it for the girls, you know, another guy who's just learning music maybe, and another guy, you know, we were all pretty much in the same spot somehow, psychically, and for some reason the way we rehearsed and stuff, it was very automatic, you know. It was like no questions were asked. It was like, you do this, you do this, you do this, and it was like there was no leader, really, and it was just automatic. It just worked out, and nobody ever argued. Nobody ever said, I won't sing that song, or, you know, it was just great. We rehearsed for about, say, a month, you know, at my parents' house or Ray's house or whatever, and then that's when we started getting gigs. We got a gig at my parents' friend's house, the doctor guy, and then we got a gig at the at Ray's mother's where she worked or something, at the aircraft company, and you know, little parties here and there.
But when I looked at Jim, I thought, this guy's got it. Once he got on stage, and the girls fell in love with Dionysus, the Maenads fell in love with Dionysus, that's when the charisma really developed. So as he progressed in his career, he became more and more and more charismatic. Up to that point, he was not a lead singer. He was embarrassed. He didn't even want to sing his songs to me. He said, I don't have a voice, Ray. I said, Jim, sing. Just sing, man. It's just you and me. And he was right on the pitch, and he had a soft, whisper-haunted Chet Baker kind of voice, and he was right on pitch, so I knew everything was going to work out fine, you know, in the recording studio.
And what was the genesis of the songs and
The hits?
who wrote them?
Of our songs?
Yeah.
It was mostly Jim and myself.
Did you write lyrics as well as music?
Yeah, I wrote some lyrics. I ended up writing most of the hit. Light My Fire was the first song I ever wrote.
How did you work out arrangements, Ron?
We'd all work them out together. That's one good thing we did, is everybody just automatically kind of knew what part to play.
Robbie Krieger came in with the first song he ever wrote, which is Light My Fire. He showed me the chord changes, A minor to an F sharp minor. But it was a kind of a folk song, and Densmore said, no, let's not do it folk, let's do a jazz, let's do a Latin thing. So that's a Latin beat. Then it goes into a hard 4. Morrison puts the second verse on. Our love becomes a funeral pyre. Of course, death enters the equation again. And then I put on the introduction. So everybody put something to it, and that's how the song became a Doors song, because everybody put themselves into it. Robbie's flamenco, Densmore's jazz and Latin influence from Southern California, my classical, and then the John Coltrane thing. Coltrane in My Favorite Things. Doing 3/4 A minor to B minor, we do 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I solo on it, Robbie solos on it, and now how do we get out of it? God, we're just going and going. Sometimes in person we'd go 10 minutes on this alone, just keep doing it. How do we get out of it? And Densmore said, let's do a 3 against 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then where do we go? What do we do? Do we just keep doing that? And Jim said, no, go to that turnaround. Go to that, your introduction, Ray. You know, and oh, right. So everybody sticks something in. That's how Doors wrote songs. I played a Vox Continental organ as played by all the English mod bands. Eric Burden and the Animals, Alan Price played the Vox Continental, the Dave Clark Five. Anybody who played an organ had a Vox Continental. I was lucky enough to get a Vox Continental. Now, on top of that, I played the Fender Rhodes keyboard bass. It had like 32 notes, and it sat on the left-hand side above. It sat on top of the organ. It was a thin, flat organ. So I had, as it's called, two manuals. The right hand for all the lead lines, and on the left-hand side, I played the bass notes. It was like playing like boogie woogie.
What happened next to get you a record deal? Do you remember that?
Well, we had knocked on every door in town, but nobody wanted it. Billy James signed us up for Columbia, but they passed. They let us out in 6 months or something. Finally, some people started wanting to do it. You know, Zappa wanted to produce us, and then Terry Melcher wanted to produce us, but we didn't want a producer. We wanted a record label. So finally, Jack Holzman came, and he was from Elektra, and he liked it.
Was it Jack's wife, Nina? Had she seen you before or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Or had she? I think she saw us at the Whiskey, but she probably talked him into it.
The first album, I think we did it in a couple of weeks. We didn't do more than a few takes on everything.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, yeah. We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there. Or can you still recall the time we cried? Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. I found an island in your arms, country in your eyes. Arms are changing, eyes are lying. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through, oh yeah!
Everybody, welcome to my brand new deep dive series. Very excited today to embark on a brand new one featuring one of my favorite bands of the 1960s, The Doors. And today I'm going to be talking about their debut self-titled album. This was released on January 4th, 1967 to herald in the new year on the eve of the Summer of Love. It was actually recorded in August of 1966. This is my mono copy. It's a repress. Got a nice Rhino hype sticker. And then I've also got a repress stereo copy, also with the Rhino hype sticker. This is the cassette copy. I believe these were 80s reissues. And then I also have a CD copy. This happens to be the remastered version. But they were signed to Elektra Records, and they began recording their debut after they were kicked out of the Whiskey in LA, where they had a residency. And it's one of those timeless albums. It's definitely, I think, one of my top 5 albums of 1967, along with The Who Sell Out, Sgt. Pepper, Smiley Smile by the Beach Boys. So many great albums were coming out in 1967. The Rolling Stones in January also released their Between the Buttons album. But this is an album that explores the darker side of man's psyche and delving into some themes that people were, up to that point, kind of afraid to explore. They were a little bit taboo. I mean, in the end, you have the whole Oedipal sequence where Jim Morrison is talking about wanting to kill his father and have relations with his mother. You got Light My Fire, but it uses the analogy of a raging fire to convey feelings of passion. And the Doors' debut is just one of those albums that doesn't sound like any other album in the 60s. It doesn't sound like any other Doors album, for that matter. And the fact that this was their debut is just really mind-blowing. And it's one of the greatest debut albums of all time. I know I don't have to convince you of that. But it sounds, at the same time, it sounds out of time and out of place. But then, on the other hand, it doesn't, because pretty much anything went in the 60s. Ray Manzarek, more than any other musician in the Doors, I feel really defined that Doors sound. I mean, you had the great jazzy guitar playing of Robert Krieger. You had the fantastic drumming of John Densmore, but it was really Ray Manzarek's organ, at least on the debut, that really gave it kind of its personality. And you'd heard the Vox organ before. You definitely had Alan Price in those early Animals albums, was very prominently featured. But with the Doors, it had more kind of a psychedelic flourish. There was more depth to the organ. It created more of a wall of sound that really defined what the Doors' music was capturing. This album sounds like garage rock. It sounds like psychedelic rock. It sounds like gritty, hard-rocking blues. You have a German beer hall romp. So the Doors were able to successfully weave rock and jazz and folk and the blues and all of their influences. They were able to distill successfully into one of the greatest albums of all time. So let's get into the songs on this album. It opens up with Break On Through to the Other Side. Aggressive organ playing by Ray Manzarek, an aggressive vocal by Jim Morrison. There's some guitar stabs by Robbie Krieger, but you don't quite get the sense of what a great guitar player he is until we get into the next track. But some definitely cool bossa nova drumming by John Densmore, just showing what a skilled musician he was. Those very dark lyrics by Jim Morrison. What a great way to kick off the album. And it definitely gives you a flavor of what you are about to experience on the rest of this album. The next song, Soul Kitchen, a bit of a mellower track, settles into this hypnotic groove with Ray Manzarek's keyboard.
The clock says it's time to close now. I guess I better go now. I really like to stay here all night. The cars crawl past, all stuffed with eyes. Streetlight share, there were high, low, low. Your brain seems bruised with numb surprise.
very interesting in the lyrics how he's able to talk about singing about the restaurant, but also turning it into a love song. A classic tune. I love Robbie Krieger's guitar solo. Very cool. Excellent song. Third track is the first ballad we would get from the Doors, The Crystal Ship. A great crooning vocal from Jim Morrison. Again, more fantastic guitar playing from Robbie Krieger. Great keyboards from Ray Manzarek to set the mood. Nice understated drumming from John Densmore. A very effective, heartfelt ballad. Then into some bluesy territory with 20th Century Fox. I love the swirling psychedelia of that song.
She's a 20th Century Fox. She's a 20th Century Fox. No tears, no fears, no ruin years, no clocks. She's a 20th Century Fox. Oh, yeah.
And then we get straight into Alabama song, Whiskey Bar, which sounds a little bit almost like a novelty track. I mean, it's so distant from anything else on this record. I know people who hate it, but I also know people who love it. I happen to feel like it fits very well onto this very quirky album. I don't mind it at all. I like all of it. I love the kind of cheesy Ray Manzarek organ. I find it very charming. And then, of course, we have the epic Light My Fire, which, of course, is the Doors' Stairway to Heaven. But it is an amazing song, the way that it was built up using so many different elements of jazz and the blues. It was a song written by Robbie Krieger with some input from Jim Morrison. But it's great, whether it's the edited version or the longer album version, it's just magical.
You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. The time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose, and our love become a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. Yeah.
Side 2 opens up with the bluesy Backdoor Man, and this is one of the grittiest early blues songs that the Doors would cover. Jim Morrison with that swagger, and the Doors just kicking ass behind him. A great song. I Looked at You, more kind of psychedelic garage rock. I love how it shifts tempos from the verses to the chorus. Really enjoyable song. End of the Night is a moody, very dark song. Again, exploring the dark fringes of society and man's psyche. Not to get too much into the philosophical leaning of the lyrics, but a very cool, sets a definite ominous mood. I love the spookiness of this track. You just want to light some candles and listen to the song in the dark. Take it as it comes. It's some more garage rock, some trippy lyrics from Jim Morrison, but a heavy rocker in the Doors style, which I really like. And then the epic, the end. The Doors were always ending their albums with these epic cinematic tracks, and I don't have to tell you how great the end is. If you wanted to pick a song that defined 60s acid rock, you couldn't do better than the end. It is such a captivating song with Robbie Krieger's exotic sounding guitar, John Densmore's understated drumming, Ray Manzarek's hypnotic organ. It is cinematic and atmospheric in every respect of the word. Just a masterpiece of a song.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end hurts to set you free, but you'll never follow me. The end of laughter and soft lies. The end of night, sweet child tonight. This is
And it ends just as quietly as it begins. Fantastic lyrics, a fantastic performance, and the end to what is just an epic, epic album. So anyway, sorry this episode went a little long, but next one, I promise, will be shorter. Hope you're doing great. Hope you enjoy this series. Let me know in the comments section your thoughts on this album. And as always, take care.